MMORPG is defined as an online role-playing video game in which a very large number of people participate simultaneously. Pirate is defined as someone who attacks and robs at sea. So the real question to get to here is, are there MMORPGs about pirates, with tropical themes, boat theft, and peg-legged, scurvy sea dogs? Well, no. Okay, yes, sort of, but we'll get to that. Firstly, for simplicity's sake, we'll need to break this up into some categories. Don't make me walk the plank over this, as of course there will be some overlap between them. Also, there's like a bajillion video games in existence. I have not played them all. If there's a game fitting this online roleplay pirate stuff thing that I don't mention in the video, feel free to let me know in the comments. And as usual, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'm Scurvy Banana. I make videos about games, a lot of the time about pirates. Been trying to branch out a bit though. If you're into my stuff, go ahead and sub, as I'm about to hit that exciting 500 subscription count milestone. Thanks. Old and defunct. Most pirate-themed MMORPG games fall here, as the 2000s was really the golden age for the MMO genre. Many of these games are just very old at this point and were completely shut down. Here be private servers. Initially releasing way back in 2003, Puzzle Pirates is an interesting take on the whole thing. It features an open and online world, but instead of traditional combat of the sort, everything exists as a puzzle game. Sailing the ship is a puzzle game. Sword fighting another player is a puzzle game. And even the simple task of running the bilge pump on the ship is a puzzle game. Over the years it has switched hands a few times, but still manages to be up and running with a small cult following. In 2022, there was an attempt to branch out with the game Arcane Waters, a similarly pirate-themed online game, but it floundered and is currently sitting indefinitely in early access. Pirates of the Burning Sea is likely your best bet for any sort of traditional and classic MMORPG type game in a pirate setting. It first came out in 2008, riding off the success of games like World of Warcraft, which really propelled the genre into their mass popularity that they had at the time. It has a variety of nations and classes to play, as well as land and ship combat sections. As expected though, at this point it's lost a majority of its player base and has of course shifted developer hands a few times. But also as expected, it still exists. It still has a following of players, and they are still playing on the official servers. Often overlooked for its association with Disney and children's media, the movie game Pirates of the Caribbean Online, or POTCO, was actually pretty decent for its time. It's one of those that I still see regularly getting brought up in conversations, even to this day, despite its official servers ending in 2013. On the bright side, there is a fan project that is holding it together still with a surprising amount of players, and that is under the name The Legend of Pirates Online, or Tlopo. The coolest thing about this Tlopo project is that it isn't simply a mirror of what once was the official server it shut down, but it does have a passion-driven developer team actively adding to and expanding what was left of the game. It's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of the movie series. The anime market. Gacha gamblers and anime cartoon fanatics rejoice, here be fan service. So a lot of these really sit in the same sort of category, being old and outdated. Take the One Piece inspired Tales of Pirates, for example. At this point has been shut down for years, but there's different servers of it still like up and running and stuff, like Tales of Pirates 2 or Pirate King Online and King of Pirates Online. And to be honest, I don't play any of these, so I can't keep them all straight, but I figured I should mention that they exist or did exist. They're a thing. There's also other bog standard 2000s anime type of games, your Voyage Centuries and your Florenzias and others. And again, I haven't followed all of these close enough to really speak up on them individually, but given my knowledge of MMOs, I would imagine these are particularly grindy and contain heavy amounts of pay to win. Some of them are still running though, so I guess people are still playing them. Pirates in non-pirate themed games. This is a mouthful of a header that really sums it up on its own. There are quite a few games that aren't entirely about swashbuckling but still allow a relative amount of the fantasy. One of the games that I spent the most time playing throughout my life was probably Guild Wars 2. While pirate isn't a definitive class in this one, there are several different classes who do have the ability to do things like use pistols and rifles, and you can combine that with a sword here and there and certain outfits, and then whoa, you look like a pirate. There are also several maps that do feature underwater combat sections and coasts full of pirate enemies and zombie pirate shipwrecks, but the coolest part to me was that initially the capital city of the entire game was a sort of pirate-themed shantytown where all the buildings are made up of parts of old ships reconstructed. It was awesome, but unfortunately they did blow up that city and then rebuild a way less cool-looking one on top of it. Boo! Arcade, unfortunately, I don't think exists anymore at this point, but it did have a very interesting set of PvP rules. There were two main factions at war with each other, but you could also be a traitor to your own faction and commit crimes against your countrymen. You could get caught and go to jail and face a trial. The coolest part was that if you were bad enough, or I guess a good enough criminal, your faction would kick you out completely and you'd be left to roam the ocean in between the two main land masses that were ruled by the main two factions. This ocean was also a main trade route. Considering the PvP rules and the ability to do things like own and command ships, there were full guilds of PvP pirate raiders constantly at odds with everyone else in this ocean section. A few years back, Amazon Games put out the period piece MMO New World. It can be thematically appropriate, what being set in the 17th century and all. You can get a musket, a rapier, and a twirly mustache. The game even starts with you waking up after a shipwreck on a strange new island. It does drop the ball beyond this point, as besides some pirate zombies to fight in a few places, the whole piracy thing becomes non-existent over the other more present fantasy themes. And lastly, in this oddball category, MapleStory is sort of an odd one, but I felt like I should include it because it does include an entire set of pirate-themed classes. The game itself is an interesting mix of 2D platforming, chibi anime, MMO grind, and pay-to-win. But maybe that's what you want. Or at least, maybe that becomes tolerable when your character class options are Buccaneer, Corsair, or Cannoneer. Online, but not MMORPG. What I mean by that is games that are pirate-themed and offer some sort of persistent world server, but they aren't exactly traditional MMORPGs. Honestly, this is really where the modern online gaming market in general sits, as the popularity of MMORPGs has really died down since the 2010s. Sea of Thieves. Do I really even need to say anything more than that? I think anybody remotely interested in this topic is probably more than familiar with that one at this point, but there are two sort of branching paths we can carry off of it. There are a few similar but different titles. One branch of the path leads to the survival crafters. Typically they're lobby-based, open world games, a couple examples off the top of my head being the 2018 ARC follow-up titled Atlas. But also another one to throw out there is the early access title If Sun Sets. The alternative branch off that we can look at is the lobby-based battle royales. There are two variety of these when it comes to the piratey stuff that I've seen, and we've got the games that are entirely ship-based, like Maelstrom, and then on the other hand you have the ones that are more like Sea of Thieves, where you control an individual crew member and have combat over the boat. So that's games like Black Wake or Blazing Sails. What's left now? Since there really aren't any modernized and contemporary fully pirate-themed MMORPG games, we gotta kinda make a mishmash of things that might sorta scratch the itch in one way or another. Here's my personal picks for these sort of games that are similar enough and maintain a decent amount of modernization and still have a player base. Sea of Thieves. At this point, I probably don't even need to say anything else about this one. Skull and Bones. This one might surprise some folks. While there is a lot of discourse about this, and I'm personally not a fan or a player of this one objectively, it is a very modern game, it's cross-platform, it's pushed out by a huge studio, it's going to maintain something of a player count. Speaking of, there are reports that its player base is still surprisingly large, and supposedly they already have a year or two of content already in development, so it should be supported for a while. Uncharted Waters Origin. I have gripes with this one in terms of its mobile game-isms, like its monetization and game design being based around said monetization. Taking a step back from that, I really do think it's a beautiful looking game, and I can definitely see the appeal of it even through my own discouragements. Uncharted Waters itself is a pretty large franchise, and this is actually even the second MMORPG in its series. This is just the newest one that is on the market. You can check it out, it's free. Pirate 101. This one isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea, considering it's a cartoony, child-friendly fantasy world with turn-based combat and is a bit dated at this point. Although I did take a good chunk of time to play it last year, there was still a pretty decent player base, and it still seemed to be getting updates and support while that was a bit infrequent. There's an upcoming game called Windward Horizon. If the upcoming sequel game is anything like its predecessor, it will feature persistent lobby-based online servers and an experience very reminiscent of the all-time favorite and just classic game in general, Sid Meier's Pirates. I also suggest if it's the thing you're into, you can go ahead and look at the first game, which is simply just titled Windward. However, Windward Horizon is slated to release this year and is probably going to have a larger amount of players. What's the problem then? None of these still standing games at the end here are really the traditional and typical MMORPG experience. So if you came here expecting to find a fully pirate-themed and modernized World of Warcraft, I'm sorry that I've failed you. It's just not really something that exists on the market in these days.